Let's look at a piece of hardware that was engineered to be a portable powerhouse, only to be abandoned by the very company that made it. But instead of fading into obscurity, it was resurrected and kept powering up by a global network of fans. The Sony PlayStation Vita launched with hardware years ahead of its time. It featured a vibrant OLED screen, actual dual analog sticks, and a highly capable ARM processing architecture under the hood. But despite the impressive tech, official support dried up quickly. Sony severely restricted the console, forcing users to rely on proprietary memory cards that were strictly locked down and prohibitively expensive. This created a massive void. Millions of users were left holding incredibly capable hardware that had no official roadmap and a shrinking library of games. Yet that abandonment became an invitation. It forced a scattered group of rogue engineers to step in and rebuild the console's entire ecosystem, starting right from the motherboard. The first obstacle was access. A group known as Team Molecule cracked the system's security, releasing tools called HENkaku and Ensō. These exploits allowed the console to run unauthorized native code the exact moment it booted up. But even with root access, developers hit a physical wall. Sony's proprietary memory cards were simply too small and too expensive to hold the sheer volume of custom software the community wanted to build. To bypass this, an engineer named Yifan Liu designed a physical hardware modification. The diagram shows data routing away from the blocked proprietary slot, pushing through the unused 3G modem port to a standard microSD card. Software tools then force the kernel to recognize these cheap, high-capacity cards as the primary drive. SK Gleba also tackled the console's aging network capabilities. Building a plugin called ITLS Ensō updated the web browser with modern security certificates, allowing the abandoned device to successfully communicate with the modern internet. By dismantling both the physical and digital locks, these engineers turned a closed commercial product into a completely open developer platform. With storage solved, developers turned to performance. Sony originally designed the Vita with strict thermal limits, deliberately underclocking the CPU and GPU to stretch out the battery life. A developer named Electri saw this bottleneck and wrote a kernel-level plugin called PS Shell. PS Shell manipulates the hardware, letting users take 4 independent processing nodes, the CPU, GPU, bus, and X-bar, and manually push them past factory frequencies to their maximum ceiling. Paired with a tool called Vita Graphics, this extra power forces originally downgraded games to render at crisp native resolution. By rejecting the manufacturer's conservative thermal limits, the community proved the hardware was capable of handling a much heavier graphical load. But an overclocked, unlocked console still needs something to play. The community now faced a massive software drought. A developer named The Flow built an Android wrapper. This flowchart shows how it intercepts instructions written for Android devices, translates them on the fly, and outputs native Vita commands. This translation layer natively runs massive mobile ports flawlessly on a console they were never designed for. Another developer, HENkaku, expanded this library by creating VitaGL. This tool translated open-source graphics calls into a format the Vita could understand, bringing hardware-accelerated PC classics like Quake straight to the handheld. To distribute all this new software, HENkaku built VitaDB, a centralized community-run app store that users could browse directly from the device. This triggered an absolute boom. Developers like Northfear, CPass Jest, and Patnos D began porting classic PC strategy games, complex retro emulators, and modern indie hits. These developers engineered a sprawling, cross-generational software library that the manufacturer ultimately failed to provide. Contrast the heavily restricted official Vita experience of 2012 with the sprawling, open capabilities of the 2025 community-modded device. Custom interfaces like RetroFlow replaced the default bubble menus, turning the device into a unified library for 4 generations of PlayStation games. This community-led ecosystem demonstrates how right-to-repair ingenuity can actively reverse planned obsolescence. The Vita now serves as a living archive for digital preservation. The console evolved into a Swiss Army knife of handheld gaming,